Good evening and welcome into the Mafia cast, brought to the fans by the fans, and this is your one-stop shop for all things Bills every single week. Now here are your hosts, Mike Yanni, Ronnie Eastham, and Casey Ceda.
Welcome back in, Bills Mafia. Welcome to the Mafia cast. We have a special guest tonight from the Shout podcast. It's Ryan Talbot. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Mike and I both were just listening to your latest episode with Matt. So you're burning the, what do they call it? Burning the candle on both ends tonight.
Yeah. Staying busy.
Double duty.
There you go. Well, so like I said, thank you for coming on here. Really quick, if you're, listening to the show, please like, subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. It's funny because Ryan was just commenting on the number of Bills pages on Facebook, and we have one of those, the Mafia cast. So we're one of those, I don't know, what, 4,000 or 5,000 of them on there.
No shortage.
Yeah. Let's just jump right on into it. First of all, so I think the biggest thing that's probably on most Bills fans' minds right now and concerns is the injuries. They just continue to pile up. What is the latest that you guys are hearing from as far as the Samuel situation and any other the players that are currently injured?
Yeah, Curtis Samuel, week to week with turf toe, which, there's 3 different levels of turf toe, and we don't know the severity of it. They labeled him as week to week, so you might think it's either that moderate or the most extreme degree, but it could be also something that's just minor, and the Bills are just playing it safe and listing him in that capacity. So he's already missed almost a week of practice due to what they were calling body soreness, or lower body soreness. So that's likely what it was. At least I would assume so. Turf toe is tough because for some players it lingers throughout an entire season. For others, it comes and goes. So it's something to monitor. And that's a big injury to take place right now because while I don't think Curtis Samuel necessarily is going to lead this team in receiving yards or receptions, he's going to be a big factor in this offense based on the fact that he knows Joe Brady's system. He's going to be that moving chess piece. He's a guy that you can put in the backfield, line up inside or outside. I think that he will be the guy that they move a lot pre-snap when he is healthy, which will help Josh Allen diagnose what the defense is in and what they're seeing. So he's going to be a big factor in this offense as long as he can stay healthy. So for turf toe to pop up now, it's definitely less than ideal.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I wanted to ask you, because I'm trying to think, ever since I saw about the Samuel injury today, is there a player on this roster right now as far as the receiving room that could maybe to an extent replace him as far as the gadgetry that they're hoping to use him for?
I wouldn't think so in terms of everything that he can do because of his build and because of how he's been used in the past under Joe Brady. I could see a KJ Hamler benefiting. I don't think he is the same type of player necessarily, but he has the speed to his game. He can certainly play inside. You could do some end arounds with him. I don't think you're going to line him up in the backfield necessarily. He's one guy that I think could benefit from this, and you never want to say benefit for an injury, but he is someone in mind. Guys like Hamler, Tyrell Shavers, it's going to benefit them in terms of maybe have a better shot of making this 53-man roster. There's the MVS injury as well, obviously, where he is week to week too. So there's opportunities for guys to possibly make this initial 53-man roster. I think Shavers is the biggest beneficiary of that because I've had him in the mix as that wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. But a guy like Hamler that has some athleticism to his game, maybe he could benefit as well and also return kicks and punts if there was an opportunity for him to make this initial roster.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, no names really stick out because I guess, since he's been here, he's been looked at as that chess piece that Ryan just quoted it or said. But, that's he came in to be that for us. So you're not really going to find someone that's going to replace that right now.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of times on social media today already bringing back McKenzie.
That's scary. That's scary.
I mean, I'm not sure what to think about that, but I wanted to hear from you, Ryan, what you think about that potential of him coming back here again. He kind of left here saying some not very great things about, that whole situation, but what do you think?
I think initially he probably thought he was going to be more of a receiving option, take over that Cole Beasley role, and that never ever came to fruition. So I can see that why on the way out, maybe he wasn't completely positive about the time here. I just think it's a step in the wrong direction to bring Isaiah McKenzie back. Good locker room guy. Players love him, a glue guy, so to speak, in that capacity. But I don't necessarily think he brings anything to the field itself or makes this team better in terms of the actual games being played.
Yeah, I wish I'd had a little bit more time today to kind of look over, see who's out there. I'm not even sure there's any legitimate free agent options right now.
No, I mean, they'd have to wait until roster cutdowns to even look for someone that would have a somewhat similar skill set to what Curtis Samuel can do. But even then, it's going to be tough just because of the fact that he's played under Joe Brady, the fact that he knows all the terminology. He was, this was something where he was probably helping the other receivers. My cat's attacking me on screen now.
Nice.
So it's probably one of those things where there is no real option to replace him in terms of what the Bills likely plan for him. I don't want to say it in the past tense because I think he will be back sooner rather than later. What they plan for him to do this year.
Yeah. Let's kind of move over to another injury. We were talking about Mitchell Trubisky a little bit, and they today signed Anthony Brown, former backup in Baltimore, and I think the Raiders before that, if I remember correctly. What do you know about Anthony Brown?
Yeah, Anthony Brown was a UDFA in 2022, signed with the Baltimore Ravens, was on their practice squad, was elevated in December that year. Lamar Jackson was already hurt at this point. Huntley was there. Tyler Huntley, was their quarterback, and he actually came into a game when Huntley got injured and helped them hold on to I believe it was like a 16-14 win. Started the following week, the regular season finale against the Bengals. He had 3 turnovers in that game. He threw for almost 300 yards or had almost 300 yards of offense, but wasn't enough in that regard. Was released last year off of their practice squad early in the year, and I don't think he played anywhere last season in terms of the NFL. But he was recently on the Raiders on their roster. He was waived in the middle of August, so just a few days ago. So he was in a camp this summer. There's not a lot of NFL experience to his game, but he played 5 seasons of college football, 3 at Boston College, 2 in Oregon. He improved as a passer in his final 2 seasons at Oregon, where he was around that 65% completion rate. I think a lot of that had to do with the offense that they run, being very quarterback friendly, where he was in the 50s at Boston College. He does have some athleticism to his game. He can run. He can use his legs, keep plays alive. Really just a body for a preseason game, because the Bills have already said we're not playing any of our starters in this matchup. It's going to be the Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown Jr. show. God bless any of those Bills season ticket holders that are stuck with those full price preseason tickets. You're going to have to give them away if you're not going to Kids Day, I think, at this rate. But it's an opportunity, though, for Brown Jr. If he plays well, he could get a practice squad spot over Ben DiNucci in Buffalo or somewhere in this league. Teams are always looking for guys to develop, and although he was out for a year, didn't really play anywhere last season, if he performs well enough in a short amount of time to learn this system, where I'm sure he'll be handing the ball off early and often, but if he does enough, he could stick somewhere, get an opportunity somewhere on a practice squad, or an opportunity at least.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to ask you this question first, and we'll go over to Ryan. Because I'm bringing this up because Ryan and you and Matt talked about it a little bit on your show tonight, previously tonight. the lack of quarterback play, how is that affecting some of these guys, some of the younger players' ability to make a name for themselves, I guess, if you will, or kind of try to shine to get on this roster?
I mean, you can't get them the ball. I mean, it's as simple as that, right?
Yeah,
The big thing right now is getting reps and it's practice games pretty much, and you're not getting the reps if the play is not unfolding completely, and you can't get them the ball and you're getting sacked, or it's just not working. If you're not doing the whole play properly, it doesn't count as a rep. That's a fail.
yeah,
No, I mean, that's well said. These guys aren't getting the opportunity to show what they can do in a contested catch situation or anything like that. The only thing the team can do is go back, watch the reps, see if these receivers got open on their routes. There was one last week where Trubisky just missed a guy or two that were open, and he was scrambling around in the pocket and moving around where he had guys open. So they can evaluate the players in that respect, but I'm sure they would like to see pass catchers get their opportunities to make plays on the ball and get open downfield. Zach Davidson had a nice reception in that game against Pittsburgh, probably Trubisky's best pass of the entire preseason. But players like Davidson and Shavers, Hamler, Isabella, shorter list goes on and on. They're not getting enough opportunities because, one, the Bills are going to be running the ball early and often, getting reps into their backs. Like Frank Gore Jr. got a lot late in the game against Pittsburgh. Ray Davis did a fantastic job early in the game with his reps. It's probably going to be the same game plan, is let's just run this clock out as fast as we can, get and look toward the regular season and keep as many guys healthy as possible. So the opportunities aren't necessarily going to be there for the pass catchers in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you bring up Ray Davis. It's kind of maybe the opposite effect. He's getting a little bit more action because of that.
Yeah, and he looks great. And the first preseason game, I know he averaged less than a yard per carry, but offensive line, that whole matchup was a disaster. There weren't any running lanes. They performed much better in the second game, and you saw if there was a lane for him to take, he took it. He was very sudden with it. No dancing around the backfield, hit the hole, and then from that point on, he was elusive with the ball in his hands. He made it hard for guys to bring him down. He made guys miss, and that's what you saw on the college tape of his. But sometimes what you see on college tape doesn't always transition right over to the NFL. There are certain things that keep rookies off the field. He's checking every box. He can run the ball. He's a good pass catcher. And most importantly, I think the biggest thing that keeps rookies off the field in terms of the running back position is blocking. Ray Davis is a very good blocker already, and he's only going to get better. So I think that works in his favor significantly. He's going to have a nice opportunity to cement himself as that running back number 2 for this team come Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're mentioning Ray Davis. I did kind of want to talk a little bit about him because there's been even some chatter about him being RB1, and I think that is something that will probably happen down the road, not this year. Cook is in. I think he has 2 more years left on his deal, so I can definitely see Ray Davis kind of taking that role at that point. But what I saw last Saturday, like you said it perfectly, very sudden. There was no wasted movement. He put the foot in the ground and he went. And I don't want to get on too much of James Cook because he's a great back. But there are sometimes when I feel like Cook doesn't do that. Like he's a little too long to make a decision.
More of a lateral player, where like McDermott said in the presser that Ray Davis is more square to the line. He's facing it head on, and he's looking for or anticipating the contact and playing a lot more physical.
Yeah. And James Cook, anytime he touches the ball, he can take it to the house. He has that speed, that breakability to make those big plays in the offense. But there are certain things that I think Ray Davis can do better. And like you said, take on that contact between the tackles, be a more physical back for this team. And I think that this is still James Cook's show in terms of being a running back 1, but by the end of the season, I could see Ray Davis cutting into that workload significantly, where it almost is like a 1A, 1B scenario. And that's not a bad thing. It would keep James Cook fresh for the playoffs. The Bills, clinch another playoff berth. Their skill sets work for them in terms of complementing one another. I could also see it taking some opportunities away from Cook in the red zone, where he dropped some touchdown passes last year. He's not necessarily that physical back that you want to get the ball to down near the goal line, where Josh Allen's had some opportunities to run for scores in the past, where they did go to Singletary when he was here in the past. I think Davis's ability to, one, catch the ball out of the backfield benefits him, but also the physicality would benefit him near the goal line too. So that might even be how it starts out. But by the end of the season, I could see this being a nice 1A, 1B type of scenario.
Yeah.
I will definitely not be drafting Cook in my fantasy leagues this year. I actually had a fantasy content creator reach out to me on Twitter the other day, asking me about what I thought about James Cook, and I basically told him just that. I think Cook still gets 1,000+ yards, but I think Ray Davis is really going to eat into that passing game, because he's been fantastic so far. And to your point with the drops of Cook, we saw a little bit of that last year, and it's still an issue. So I don't really see that going away. But but yeah, I think it's a good situation though, as far as the Bills and the team goes. Maybe not so much for roster managers or fantasy managers, all right?
Right. No, absolutely. And last year I thought that where he was being drafted, he had good value in Cook. Right now, his average draft position is a little bit too high for my liking, based on, like you said, he could see some of his role get diminished over the course of the year. I don't know if the touchdowns will be there for him overall, because I think, Dalton Kincaid's going to have such a huge role in this offense. You still have Josh Allen, who can score with his arm and his legs, and Khalil Shakir in line for a big role here as well. So with all the mouths to feed, with all the players that can score, I don't know if I like Cook this year in fantasy football as much as I did 1 year ago.
Yeah, you brought up Khalil Shakir. So our other co-host, Casey, who couldn't be with us tonight, it's his wife's birthday. So I guess he chose her over us, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But so he and I have this little bet that I projected Khalil Shakir with 1,200 yards, but the biggest part of it was 100+ receptions, and he thought I was crazy, and I probably am. But we had Matt on here a while back as well, and I, posed the same thing to him. And I wish I could recall exactly what he said, but I think he was saying that he could see a path for that. What do you think about Khalil Shakir hitting 100?
100 receptions. I have him below. I have him in that 80-90 range. So, I mean, it's within where my projections are. If the Bills do go a little bit more with the receivers over maybe what I expect for Kincaid, where I have Kincaid having in this monster year, I think Shakir leads all the receivers in terms of receiving yards, targets, and reception. So I don't think necessarily that you're far off or that it can't happen. It's not where I have him at, but I think he's in for a huge year, where from year 1 to year 2, he went up by about 450 yards receiving. Yeah. You saw the production in terms of the receptions go up by the end of last season. He was their most trusted receiver. I think Kincaid, obviously, tight end, was very trusted by Josh Allen as well. But, you saw Allen targeting Shakir sometimes even more than he was Diggs in games and Davis in games, because he knew that he could get open. 1, 2, he was as good of a pass catcher as there was on that roster. He doesn't drop very many balls, and the yards after the catch were on display as well in some situations, where he made big plays after the catch in a game against I want to say there was one against the Jets, obviously in the playoff game, where it looked like he was going to get thrown to the ground against Pittsburgh, and he maintained his balance and ran in. So it's another big area that he worked on this offseason with Eric Moulds. I expect a big year for Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, same here. So Casey, even though he's spending time with his wife, he is still watching and commenting, but Ronnie's getting pied. 100% ball's going to get spread around like butter on bread. And maybe that's the case, but hey, that's, I guess, one silver lining for me, with Samuel being potentially out for maybe the first week or two.
I was going to say
few extra targets for Shakir, right?
Few extra for sure in that scenario. Yeah, that could be the silver lining if there's any.
Yeah.
John
here, I believe it can happen because Josh likes to pass. I'm looking forward to the season as far as the play of the wide receivers. I do think that this group is better than a lot of people are probably projecting or think they will be. It kind of reminds me a little bit of last year with the Houston Texans with CJ Stroud as a rookie, but there was, I think, PFF maybe or one of those had the Texans receiver group ranked dead last heading into the season. Yeah. And we saw how that turned out for the Texans. And I kind of see this group the same way, just not a lot of expectations. But I think they're gonna show out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Keon Coleman has already shown that he can be a factor between the 20s based on what I've seen from him at training camp. I know pretty quiet preseason overall. But at the bare minimum, you're going to get a guy that can be a factor in the red zone. I think he'll be more than that as a rookie. But at the very least, you're getting that. We've already talked about Shakir, what Curtis Samuel can do if and when he's healthy. It feels like, Mac Hollins doesn't get talked about enough in terms of being a pass catcher. He showed what he could do in his season with the Las Vegas Raiders. I know last year was a utter disaster, but Atlanta's offense as a whole was an utter disaster between Desmond Ritter at quarterback and Taylor Heineke. It's very hard for anyone to thrive in that offense, and they had talent. That they have Pitts, they have London, they had Robinson at running back, and they just couldn't do anything offensively. I think a lot of that went on the quarterback play. So I think Hollins will be better than anticipated too, and then obviously the tight ends with Kincaid and Knox. So it's going to be a pretty solid pass-catching unit overall.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move forward, I got a few other things we wanted to kind of touch on specifically with the Joe Andreessen story and some other things. But before we do that, let's hear from our sponsors at Game On.
Hey, this is John from Game On Video Games and Sports Memorabilia. We are Rochester's premier trading card store. We have a wide selection of trading cards, autographs, and memorabilia. We also do autograph and celebrity appearances in the store. So if you're looking for the perfect gift for yourself, relative that doesn't like the Bills, or for a friend, come down and check us out at our Rochester location, 2670 Dewey Avenue, or our Hamburg location at 1 Buffalo Street. Go Bills.
Go Bills. So the Joe Andreessen story, it's an amazing story. It is. The local boy. You and Matt see these guys obviously way more than the rest of us do. You're up close with them. What we saw on, and I'm going to let you get a little plug for your insiders here in just a second, because I asked this question on the insiders. But what we saw on Saturday from Joe, is that what you guys have been seeing in practices and throughout training camp? And was that not a surprise to you to see him perform that way?
At training camp early on, you're kind of buried on the depth chart. You're a UDFA. They're healthy at the position. But when he was on the field, he did make some plays here and there, but injuries have given this kid the ultimate opportunity. And to his credit, he had like the game of his life on Saturday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was flying to the football. He was shedding blockers. He showed great instincts on run plays to the outside. He knew how to contain Justin Fields on the 4th and 2 play. Was well ahead of, I think, what a lot of people were probably expecting out of this kid. That, again, he didn't even get a practice squad. He wasn't even a practice squad signing. He was a rookie minicamp invite. They had to perform well enough there to even get signed to their practice squad, or to get signed to their 90-man roster, I should say. So that really stands out to you in terms of where he was, where rookie minicamp over being the UDFA type of guy, to where he is now. And I think, the way you guys have it phrased here, is he making a case for the 53-man roster? Yes. Matt and I just had that discussion on it. He thinks that he's making the 53. I'm not 100% there yet. And if we're talking about just the linebackers in Buffalo's room right now, yes, I have him on the 53-man roster. But at roster cutdown day, there's going to be a lot of linebackers that get cut across this league. A lot of guys that either A, have starting experience, have experience in schemes very similar to what Buffalo runs, or have been a part of Buffalo's scheme here. So those type of players might get priority over it, where in Andreessen, excellent athlete, tested off the charts leading up to the draft, a little bit undersized. This was a preseason game, so there wasn't much game planning in terms of, I think teams might try in a regular season game with game planning. They could try to attack him for his size. If he's overly aggressive, they might try to make him over pursue in some cases, which was a big knock on a guy like Edmonds, for instance, years ago, a first round pick. So completely polar opposite of what you have in Andreessen. But I'm not 100% there yet in terms of the 53-man roster spot. I think he's definitely cemented himself as a practice squad guy, but the chance of making the initial roster is certainly solid with all the injuries that we've seen at the linebacker position and how he performed on Saturday night.
You want to let everybody know what the Insiders is really quick since you brought it up?
Yeah. Matt and I have something called the Shout Insider text line. So Bills fans can join. It's a 2-week free trial, and then it's $3.99 a month after that, where you have Matt and I one-on-one where you can pose a question to us and we'll get back to you. Sometimes we put the question in the entire text line so everyone can see it with our response. It's a really fun way to interact with Bills fans. If you're interested in signing up, 716-528-6727 or join subtext. And then it's / I always get this part wrong, but something shout, something along those lines. I'll find the link and I'll add it to the YouTube page here for sure. But the number definitely works. You can always text that and get started.
It's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I love being a part of that. And
thank you.
And getting all that. So a few things here on the side that really quick. I want to talk about Andreessen, and because this happens every year. You and Matt talked about a little bit ago too. Christian Wade, Duke Williams, Andy Isabella. There's always been that guy that has stood out in preseason and then does not make the roster. And in some cases, well, in just about every one of these cases, did nothing for the team and is not even on the team outside of Isabella. I don't want to say that that's where this kid's going because I don't believe that to be the case. But I'm kind of with you. I'm a little leery of just declaring him on the 53 right now. The point that you made with bringing in somebody after they get cut, that's a good point. And I actually didn't even think about that either because there's going to be a lot of free agents coming up here soon.
Yeah, tons of guys with NFL experience, a lot of reps. Where the Bills are now, you want that experience because they're going to roll out the season obviously with Bernard and Dorian Williams. I think Deion Jones could stick on this roster. He had a nice game against Pittsburgh per Pro Football Focus's analytics. But you probably want someone that's played meaningful reps recently as well, where Jones, it's been a few seasons since you've seen him take on a more important role. So, Andreessen's a feel-good story. Like you said, every year, though, there's that feel-good story where they get caught. Bills fans are ready to riot. They're going to lose this player. The players, they're going to get poached elsewhere. And like 99% of the time, they're not poached elsewhere. And they signed to Buffalo's practice squad. And, like you said, unfortunately, nothing usually comes of that either. Now, Andreessen, young kid, I could still see him being a factor on this team, much like some of these other UDFAs they've had over the years, where I think a guy now like Jamarcus Ingram going into third or fourth year, I think he's going to factor in big time in that cornerback depth for the team. Cam Lewis, who's stuck around because of his versatility, and depending on the health of a Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards come week one, could possibly start opposite Taylor Rapp at safety, and Hamlin's health as well being a factor in that decision. So there are guys that do factor in eventually. I could see Andreessen being a guy like that. I'm just not ready to say this kid needs to make the roster based on one really impressive performance. If he performs very well Saturday at Kids Day, because he's going to get a lot of reps there, then maybe you can make the case that he should make the 53-man roster, even if he's a guy that's inactive week in, week out. You might think, okay, we have something here. We want to develop his game. We want to see what he can do with more time in this system and more experience.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike? Should he be on the 53 or?
I don't know. If they can duplicate his energy from Saturday, man, he was on rails, man. You could hear in his interview post game that he was just fired up. I can't imagine the thoughts going through his head, and
Oh
and it
yeah.
was just like the perfect storm for him to step up and have the performance of a lifetime. Yeah, who knows? I'd love to see him there. I'm always going for the feel good story and rooting for the
Yeah.
underdog, and but maybe he hangs around for a few years, like Ryan said, and they develop him, and in the future he comes back around and becomes a solid player in the future. Um, I don't want to say caught him already, but it's
Yeah.
there is some depth there. Like you said, Ryan brought up more free agents going to be coming up. Didn't think about that. So it really is. There's who knows what the future is going to bring.
Yeah.
If he can
Another
duplicate,
player.
not duplicate, but if he can have a pretty good, I'd love to see him have another decent performance. In the
On
third game.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna get a lot of playing time. Another player here in the comments that John Robert brought up was Kingsley Jonathan. Nice sack towards the end of the game. That's another player that we've kind of seen some flashes here and there from, but not. We really haven't seen that come to fruition on the field on game days. Is he somebody you see potentially making the 53, or probably or likely back to the practice squad?
He's right there on the roster bubble, because you look and they have Rousseau and Von Miller. They have AJ Epinesa, and Smoot has kind of come on and emerges that DN number 4. So now it's a case of how many DNs are they going to carry? If it's going to be 5, has Jonathan done enough to surpass a Javon Solomon, where I think Solomon has flashed a little bit more, especially late in the summer at training camp and throughout the preseason? It was a nice performance by Kingsley Jonathan, getting that late sack, showing up, making some plays. But last year, you would have thought that if he was developing or playing at the level where the Bills wanted him, he would have been able to play a lot more with that season that Von Miller had. He was Jonathan was on the 53-man roster. He just wasn't getting much playing time or reps. And when he was kind of invisible out there. So you hope that, with each passing year, these young guys get better and better. Maybe that is the case. Maybe they've seen enough, but he also hasn't done enough with the opportunities. Like I said, Von Miller was doing nothing last season. I know the Bills were getting him out there, but you saw his snap counts diminish over the course of the year. But a guy like Jonathan couldn't kind of step up to the plate and assume more of a snap count with Miller being so unproductive.
Yeah, I couldn't take advantage of that. A couple of other players here that were mentioned because, and we'll go with John Robert again. Because of the injury, MVS may get cut. We've talked a lot about MVS on this show, and I know Casey and I do not agree with him or on him, and it's because of this guy. Casey said this year's Tyrell Shavers, meaning this year is Tyrell Shavers is the Christian Wade or Duke Williams of this year, which I don't agree with, because the mania
Which
level has not.
Andreessen's not. Okay. So.
Yeah, yeah. And Shavers is kind of one of those that, for me, that we go back and we talked about the lack of a quarterback play here in the preseason. That's one of the players to me that I feel like is not really getting an opportunity to shine in a game setting because of that. However, he has played well in training camp and done a good job. Do you think, from what you guys have seen, has he done enough to maybe unseat MVS? Because MVS has been I didn't want him from the moment they signed him. I'll just be real about it. I've never been an MVS fan. I've always been like, he couldn't stick with the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. He couldn't stick with the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Arguably two of the greatest quarterbacks this league has ever seen, and he keeps getting passed around. There's a reason for that, in my opinion. I don't want him here, but do you think Shavers has done enough?
I do. Matt is probably on the opposite side of that, in terms of he thinks that Shavers has a shot, but he's not as convinced as I am. I think Shavers brings more to the overall roster. He's really worked on becoming a good special teams player this summer. He didn't leave Buffalo after last season. Was really, working on the special teams aspect of things. And then sure enough, this summer, he gets more opportunities as a receiver and works his way working with that number 1 unit. Had all things been equal in terms of health. I'm not sure that he would have edged out MVS because MVS's guarantees in his contract. MVS does have some speed to stretch the field, which could open things up underneath, even if he's not making plays down the field on a regular basis. It's still something you have to worry about in game. So there were things like that where that made me think MVS was going to be that wide receiver 5, and the team would have to carry 6 receivers for Shavers to make it. But with this neck injury to MVS, which I'm thinking it is probably more of a sprain than a stinger based on the week-to-week designation, but we need more details on that. I could see the Bills saying we need a healthy guy, a healthy number 5 receiver. We could put MVS. We could use one of those 2 IR spots on the last of roster cutdown day and then bring him back eventually. Which, again, they can only do that with 2 players, and then you'd have to do the whole parking lot handshake deals and bring injured players along in exchange, flip-flop them that way. But I think MVS has a spot on this team because of his contract, because of how well he's hit it off with Josh Allen, things of that nature. It's not the best reasons to make a roster, but I feel like Shavers has done enough. I think Shavers brings more in terms of what he can do for you on a game-to-game basis from the special teams aspect as well. Because let's face it, whoever wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 is on this team, if they carry 6, I don't anticipate them getting a lot of reps during the game at the receiver position. You're going to want to give the bulk of those to Shakir, Curtis Samuel, if and when healthy, Keon Coleman, and then even Matt Collins is that number 4. So you have to factor everything in here. But yes, I am high on Tyrell Shavers. I think he's earned a roster spot here. But it also goes back to what I said earlier about the linebacker position. There could be a wide receiver that the Bills were high on a few years ago in the draft that become available, or someone that I think fits in here that gets cut elsewhere. It's a fun day in terms of covering the team, seeing who gets released elsewhere, seeing who makes it because of those feel-good stories. But it's also the worst because there's usually 2 or 3 guys that make the initial 53-man roster, and then they get cut a few days later because of someone that gets claimed, and that's the tough part of this gig for these guys.
Yeah. One last point I wanted to kind of touch on so 2 preseason games. I've seen some concern out there amongst the Bills fans with the offense and the lack of touchdowns. I think it's a moot point, honestly. I mean, Josh Allen, 8 total plays this preseason that we've seen him in. So I'm not personally too concerned about it. But is there anything that either one of you have any concerns with this offense going into 2024?
Nothing here personally. Like you said, 1, limited reps for Josh Allen. 2, preseason is vanilla as it gets. You're not game planning. You're not attacking player X because of their inexperience or things that you see on tape. You're just kind of going through the motions. You want to try to get the ball to some of your guys, but because of the injuries that have taken place, you're not getting Allen out there. In this game, you didn't get him out there against Pittsburgh because of the rain that fell about an hour before kickoff. Opportunities have been limited. With his just natural arm talent, I'm sure he could have led a touchdown drive or 2 had he been in either of those 2 games. But at the end of the day, you're showing as little as possible. The quarterback play is the quarterback play, so no concerns right now on the lack of TDs.
Yeah,
What do you think, Mike?
I mean, of course, without Allen, you're not going to have the best chance of scoring on the field. But there's there's something aside from that I think we're overlooking, and it's the fact that we end half our drives because we're shooting ourselves in the foot with flags, pre-snap stuff. I mean, right there. So it's not really the concern that we're not actually scoring touchdowns. It's more getting down the field and making the opportunity each and every drive in series to not, mess it up on 3rd down or something like that. In that situation, that's it doesn't matter what players are on the field. You got a pre-flag snap or a pre-snap flag, and then the ball's coming back and you're going nowhere. So more, if the lack of touchdowns is a concern, I would say the flags is a bigger concern, because that is a like a root cause of not scoring.
Yeah, flags you can definitely point to as a concern in terms of being penalized. It's something that just really bothers Sean McDermott in season, especially in games that matter, because you're right. Nothing good comes from penalties. You either back yourself up on offense and put yourself in a scenario where you take points off the board, whether it's a field goal opportunity or potential touchdown. On defense, if you're giving up free first downs to opposing teams, that will draw his ire as well. So it's definitely something, if you see this throughout the preseason, you worry that it's going to continue into the regular season. And there have definitely been some years where the Bills have been able to overcome the penalties, but it's still a factor at the end of the game where they're getting flagged 7-8 times.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 5-yard or, pass interference for a lot more than that, it does happen with this team.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and try to get on out of here. Ryan, I thank you so much for being here. I know you, like I said, this is
got a busy few days.
You guys you're killing it with the insiders. What do you guys got going on as far as the Shop Podcast? What do you got coming up?
Yeah, we definitely have our staple show on Wednesday night this week. We'll probably have a few more this week as well, based on the practices and things that happen. We have another live show coming up at Wingnuts on August 31st. Looking forward to that. That'll be a fun show to come out to because the roster will be set. We'll be looking ahead to week 1, talking about the players on this practice squad. So no shortage of things to talk about. So join us at Wingnuts August 31st if you want to see a live show. And then in season, we'll have plenty of live shows the night before a Bills game or the weekend of a primetime game. So we definitely keep Bills fans in the loop. Make sure you can join us to one of these live shows soon.
Yeah, you guys did a live show there at Wingnuts back in week 2 of last season. It's a Saturday. Myself, Casey, Mike, my wife, all of my kids, we were all there. And we walked into Wingnuts, and I noticed all some of the tables were reserved for Shout. And I was like, oh, my gosh. So I messaged Matt, and I was like, what time are you going to be? And we missed y'all by like an hour. But that would have been cool to actually meet you guys face to face. But
that place was busy, from what I remember.
Yeah,
it was busy.
Especially during football season, it gets very, very busy. We are very lucky in that regard that people like to come out and watch. So definitely a blessing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get on out of here. You can catch us, of course, on the podcast audio-only version, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever. Check us out, YouTube channel, Mafia Cast, and search it up. Give us a like and subscribe. We will see you all on Thursday night for our show. I think Casey will be back, and we're going to dive into the weekend of football and more Bills talk. So we're going to get out of here. We'll see you guys later this week.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.